A few years ago, I noticed that MAME emulation was seriously being neglected. So I took it upon myself to take over the task of supporting Acorn machines, specifically 8-bit in MAME, with the aim to preserve and emulate anything Acorn 8-bit. I've been specializing in peripherals, and I think at the moment I pretty much emulate probably over 90% of 8-bit peripherals. And whilst others take care of documenting cassettes, games, educational software and floppies, I tend to specialize in collecting ROMs with the aim of preserving the hardware that goes with them. So over the past couple of years, I've been visiting the Cambridge Museum, and with help of others at ABug meetings, I've been looking for rare pieces of hardware containing ROMs, basically just for something to emulate. One of the first ones I did a couple of years ago was the Acorn Communicator. I'm now going to share my screen. So the museum has a few Acorn communicators. I think they have 4. There's a couple of early versions, and the one that you usually see on visits is a briefcase version, which is usually seen working. So I'm going to start off with one of these early versions. So I'm just going to run this in MAME and get it up for you. See my MAME screen? Yes? Yeah. So this is an early version of the communicator. And what's interesting is it's a pre-release. It's a prototype, and the applications list on the left, we have items such as self-test, which we can go into. And ROMs from this machine were particularly interesting because they were mapped differently to production versions. I think they were half the size, so it helped improve emulation of the general memory map. And also having a self-test in there obviously helped prove to myself that, you know, emulation is pretty good. So I'm going to run a memory test. And that passes. I think everything else, most others pass as well. Obviously, modem is not implemented. Ethernet's not implemented. Restart that. You also see this version. This has got a 48K version of Boosie Basic in it. I don't know what that means as such. I've not really looked at it in that much detail. I'm guessing it's allocating 48K of RAM to it. And we can see that the MOS version is October 85. Now, there were 2 early communicators at the museum. I'm now going to flip to the other one by changing the ROM set. So this one's from about a year, well, a few months later. It's 86. You see in the top right there, it's copyright 86. And it has a different set of applications installed. Again, it's got the self-test, but now it's got 3 options for basic, 8, 16, 48K. So it kind of indicates to us that maybe this internal testing, that's a prototype, obviously. So the museum thought they had 2 very similar machines, but once we got inside and done the ROMs, we found they were completely different, basically. So that's the prototypes. I'm now going to go on to the briefcase version, shown here. So the briefcase one is a production machine. The ROMs are complete, the applications are complete. And I think this contained a lot more ROM than the prototypes. I'll have to look it up to confirm. So the application list has been trimmed down. You know, these are the production, the apps that the communicator in a briefcase actually shipped with. If you go into basic, you know, this was June 87. With the help of a couple of other guys at ABug, you know, the ROMs from this briefcase communicator had been dumped on a previous visit, apparently. But upon closer inspection, the briefcase held some hidden secrets. Once we extracted the communicator, there was a whole new separate expansion board hidden in the bottom of the briefcase. And this contained another ROM, which hadn't been previously dumped, so that was of further interest. As there's no documentation on this board, we don't really know exactly what it was for, but it looks like it contains drivers to handle additional, what look like cartridge slots in the back of the briefcase. I think these slots here at the back of the briefcase, probably intended to, you know, insert memory cards or applications on cards, but none are known to exist, or we haven't found any as yet. So if anyone finds any of those, it'd be of great interest to emulate, but you know, at the moment we don't have anything. So that's the production model for the UK. But that's not actually the latest version of the communicator that the museum has. Another one was found and dumped. And once I emulated that, we found that it was in Italian. Everything's in Italian. And if you go into basic, we can do a report. This one's actually a year later, 1988. So overall, the museum, you know, has 4 completely unique examples of the communicator, which we're very grateful for. So, shall I take questions on the communicator, or shall we just leave everything for the end before I move on to the next item?
I would suggest moving on to the next item and having Q&A at the end, please.
Okay. Another interesting item was this, the Acorn Electron trial. Now, I've never heard of this, but, you know, one day searching through the museum site, I just, you know, found it amongst the electrons. I thought, whoa, that's a different ROM. Let's get it done. So on a subsequent visit, we were able to retrieve this machine and dump the ROM. And we have the trial version of the Electron. Now, we don't know much about this. I haven't looked at the ROM myself much, but I think someone else has, and it does differ from the production ROM, but not too much. I'm not actually aware of any functional differences. You know, it's version 0.36, but it seems to behave pretty much as production. I can only assume that it was maybe used, you know, for promotional use, for review purposes, not for resale, that kind of thing. So it's an interesting find. Doesn't really do much, but, you know, it's preserving an item that was out there that was previously probably not very well known. Next item is the Comus Daisy. Now, I've never heard of this, but again, going through the museum website, I came across this machine. I thought, well, that's got a master keyboard. So on a subsequent visit, we retrieved it and had a look at it. It's a beast of a machine. As you can see here, it's got a rack of cards in there. Not sure what they do, but they look like kind of data acquisition, collecting analog, sampling, maybe something along those lines. So we had a look inside and dumped the ROMs, and it was packed full of ROM. The sideways RAM was disabled, all ROM sockets were occupied. There's also a coprocessor in there. It's basically a master turbo with the 65C102 coprocessor. There's a high basic ROM in there. So once I had the ROMs, let's see what we can do with it. And it's the Daisy. You can see all internal sockets are full. High basic in slot 8. Now, we didn't actually power this one up on the machine, so not sure. I would assume it would probably intended to self-boot. My emulation doesn't. I don't know otherwise. So you can start with Star Daisy. And this is what we get: a data acquisition and integration system from the IE86. Now, I really think this requires some floppies to do much else with it, because pretty much all the options on the menu start looking at the floppy drive. I don't know what they're looking for. I've not investigated it too much further. That's pretty much all I can get out of it. It's a nice menu. No idea what it was used for, but interesting nevertheless. And ROMs are preserved, and you can see what it does in MAME.
I think there's a huge clue in the chromatogram.
That means nothing to me. What is a chromatogram?
I don't actually know specifically, but I know somebody who would know exactly what that is.
Okay, maybe interesting to discuss that later sometime. Okay. So that's basically the machines I've dumped. I have done many others, non-Acorn as well, Hector machines and some rare microton stuff. But Acorn machines, that's pretty much it. But I do have a couple of peripherals that were dumped over a year ago. The smart cartridge from Care Electronics. It's probably not that rare, but the ROM had never been dumped. It was never found out there. And I was interested in knowing what was inside the case, basically. So opened it up, and there's 16K ROM in there. There's also 2K of RAM. So I had to work out how that RAM was mapped. So let's start a machine with this cartridge inserted. So here we have the smart cartridge version 2, Morley Care 987. This is a bit weird how you get help from it. G help. The cartridge has a button on it to activate it. So with help, does nothing. Then you press the button on the cartridge, which I've got mapped to the home button on the keyboard, and it basically gives you the help. A bit odd. It has a menu system, big button configuration menu. Big button. Never seen that mentioned before. It's the smart cartridge. So maybe this is an early version. Basically, there's options to take snapshots of memory. Not really looking at too much more than that. But actually, only a few weeks ago, another friend of mine had another smart cartridge. Looked identical to this. So he dumped the ROM. Found it was a version 2.02. So it does appear that the cartridge at the museum is an early version. If you do the G menu on this one, it's a completely different menu system. So even though the cartridges externally look identical, what's actually in them, the ROM especially, is completely different. Functionality is the same. It'd be nice if someone could compare them at some point to see exactly what changed, but the one my friend dumped looks like a production version, whereas the one at the museum looks like a very early release. So, it's always interesting, even if the item looks to be common and dumped, you never know what's going to be in there. A final item, the Mertech Companion. This is an expansion for the compact. It basically sticks on side into the expansion port, and it basically gives you all the extra expansion ports that are missing on the compact, such as megahertz bus. It's actually a 2 megahertz bus rather than a 1, user port, and analog socket. Second. So it's the compact running with the Mertech Companion. You know, in the expansion port, I've got the Mertech, you know, and then this adds analog port, user port, 2 megahertz bus. It also installs a DFS, which is not providing ROM normally on a compact. And we have a menu system to configure it. Again, this item had not been previously dumped. It's quite a rare item, so it was interesting to look at and, you know, have support for in MAME. Okay, I think that's about it on Acorn stuff. I did do a lot of Control Universal cards on my last visit, but I don't have much to show on them yet. So maybe that's for a future session. So as we've got about 5 minutes or so left, I'm open to questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Nigel. Any questions for Nigel in the, so we've got about 7 minutes or so before we take a lunch break.
Yeah, I do.
Go.
Firstly, Nigel, thank you very much for dumping those ROMs and doing all that. That's brilliant. I love the fact that that stuff, I mean, that master cartridge is a perfect example. I had no idea. Our website says nothing about the fact that that is possibly a previous version or anything like that. So that's brilliant. What I'd like to try and do, I suppose this is kind of a bit of a plea as well to anybody that fancies helping us out, but our website needs to say that. If anybody wants a login and promises not to delete everything, then we'd love for people to help us get the content on our site better. I know this is also for that Mertech Companion as well. We've got a fairly crap picture of it, just on one side. We need the other side showing the connectors and stuff. But a big thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and you know, as the the communicators as well, you know, they're all unique.
I've got a present for you as well.
What have you got there? All right, okay. Is that a different one? Another one?
Hang on, right, yeah, it's unmuted now. Yes, another one, I think. It's Grotty, and not very nice, but it has Communicator 1 ROMs in it. I don't know if you can see that. It's a bit of battery damage. We've taken the battery out as is standard. Yeah, this one come in a while ago, but because it was grotty, nobody wanted to touch it. I don't know if version 1 ROMs are something you've already got.
Well, I mean, the labels on them don't really tell us that much.
No.
It's only until you dump them and compare them, you to see what version they actually are and what applications are actually installed on them.
Do you know what size ROMs they are? Generally.
I'd have to get back to you. I have to look it up. But they did vary.
Oh, did they? Okay.
The prototypes had, I think, 2 different sizes in them. The briefcase are all consistent, but the earlier ones had different sizes, which helped improve the mapping of the ROMs in emulation.
Okay. Well, I've done these as well then today. Shoot them over to you.
Much appreciated.
No worries. Good stuff. No, thank you for doing that. Awesome stuff.
On the Electron that had the trail ROM, was there any differences physically with the motherboard?
Sorry, say that again?
The Electron that had the trail ROM on it, was it a different revision motherboard inside it, or do you not remember?
Oh, I'd have to dig a photo out. It looked pretty much identical. I don't think, I mean, who was with me at the time? Was Dave, were you sat next to me at the time, Dave Hitchens?
I can't remember if there was a different version number, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I have photographs somewhere. I can look it up and get back to you if you like. But as far as I'm aware, the circuit board was standard issue. It was basically just a different ROM distributed for, maybe promotional purposes.
Thanks.
I've got something else I'll also work on today. It's really nice having the time to do this. I have got manuals and stuff for the SPX ROM, so I'll get those scanned and uploaded to the website today.
Lovely, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So the smart cartridge.
Yeah.
So is that very similar to what on the Commodore 64, what was called the freeze frame cartridges, where basically you could load a piece of software, snapshot the entire memory, save to disk, then just then just reload the memory from disk.
I think those were probably, the best system for this kind of purpose was the replay system, BBC and master systems, the separate version of replay for the master. I think this smart cartridge is not anywhere near as advanced.
Right.
It basically is just for taking a snapshot of what you're doing.
Yeah.
As I say, I've not used it as such. It'd be interesting if people could actually use it and provide feedback on it, but I don't really know. But it looks quite simple. If you're looking to hack into some decent game, I think it would probably disable the cartridge if it had any sense.
Yes, on the second menu when you saw this, there were some patch options. So
yeah, I think that just allows you to enter, a patch basically.
Yeah.
So if some magazine provides pokes for infinite lives or whatever, you can patch.
Yeah.
Via a cartridge.
Once you've got the game running, though, those things don't have to be very complicated to just dump the memory out. Then playing the game again is load the memory back in. It only needs enough memory to store enough to copy it, like where mode 7 will be, so you can display its menu, which is probably what the 2K RAM's about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So
probably
should be able to
in there as well, so it can
copy anything, just not in a very pleasant way. Because obviously it doesn't know which bits are 0 page or what might need to be on the stack, so it'll have to dump everything, and then you probably need it to put that stuff back. But, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. It's not been dumped in the past, so it's interesting to see what's inside there, see what it's what it's doing.